Don't wait until the weather turns to replace your windows. This month, Window Nation is offering 50%. You heard me right, half off on all window styles. And their installation crews finish the job in a day or less, so you can get your new windows, then enjoy the rest of the summer safe in the knowledge that they've been expected again and again to keep your home comfortable year round. But y'all, this sale ends very soon. Schedule a fast, free estimate now with Window Nation. Call 866-90-NATION or head to windownation.com. Okay, so Simone, you and I both had the chance to see Dungeons and Dragons, the 20-sided tavern at Broadway Playhouse at Water Tower Place. And for me personally, it was unlike anything I have experienced in a Chicago theater. What did you think?
Oh my God, I loved it. The show changes every time. So kind of makes me want to go see it again.
That's exactly how I felt leaving.
What happens?
Again, even if you've never played the game, it's just like a really interactive fantasy play because of how much you're able to use your phone, interact with the choices that are taking place.
There will be plenty to see between now until the show closes September 28th. Jacoby, where can people get tickets?
Get your tickets now at BroadwayInChicago.com. Today on CityCast Chicago, it's the first week for Chicago Public Schools. The U.S. Attorney General ups its attacks on Chicago's sanctuary policies. And have y'all listened to the new Chance album, We've Got Thoughts. It's Friday, August 22nd. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. In the building with me today, WBEZ education reporter Sarah Karp. Welcome back to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
We've also got freelance journalist Brandon Pope in the building. Welcome back.
Hey, what's good, bro? Always good to be here.
If you are new to the podcast, we appreciate you dropping by to check us out. I'm not sure what your expectations are, but here at CityCast Chicago, we are all things Chicago every day, 5 days a week. This week on Monday, we asked, why the hell is the city so broke? Tuesday, we talked thunderstorms and stadiums. Wednesday was all things pizza. And yesterday, we revisited our beautiful house music episode. Please, if you only listen to one, you should probably listen to Monday and find out why the city is so broke. But then go and listen to the house music episode. And today, like pretty much every Friday, we've brought in two amazing Chicagoans to talk about some of the things going down in and around the city. But we're going to start with pizza. We had Steve Delinsky in the building on Wednesday. Some people know him as the food guy, the hungry hound. But one thing is true, he knows Chicago pizza. And I want to start there. Pope, do you have a favorite place in the city for pizza ahead of Pizza City Fest this weekend?
Man, it's always tough because Chicago is a utopia for pizza. I mean, there's so many options. We have the range. Everyone got strong opinions. They get kind of spicy over it, don't they? It ain't that deep. Well, let me just go ahead and say.
Pun and pan intended.
See what you see? You get me. I prefer a nice tavern style cut. I love when they lay it on thick at Beggar's Pizza. You know, I do the sausage, I do the mushroom, I do the ricotta cheese, with a little spinach in there. Yeah. That thing is thick with 3 or 4 C's. Thick. So that's what I would go with. Some thick old Beggar's Pizza.
Beggars don't get a lot of love city-wise, obviously loved on the south side, south suburbs. But I'm glad to have some Beggars representation on the episode. I actually really like a good Beggar slice. Sarah, what about you? You were shaking your head when he said he liked a good tavern style. What's your go-to pizza?
Yeah, because I was thinking that when I was a kid, I really loved Barnaby's Pizza. And Barnaby's, I don't even know if they exist anymore. If they do, it's
They do.
I haven't, the one that I used to go to, which was in Rogers Park, doesn't exist anymore, but they're tavern style pizza. But living here on the south side, I've become very familiar with Italian Fiesta pizza, which
Come on, Italian Fifi.
But I have to say, I need like a couple days recovery because it's very greasy, but it is very good. So, I do not really like the really thick, Chicago style pizza. And I hope I don't get like expelled for saying such a thing. But
now people got their opinions. Honestly, Some people are deep dish haters, some are evangelists, some love stuff, some love straight up crispy cracker thin crust. Honestly, I love it all. I'm down to get down all around the city. Fifi do get my heart though, and it is very greasy. Watching someone have it for the first time and like take a napkin, one of them brown napkins they give you, and try and like douse the top of the grease and watching how fast it soaks up. I don't know. It's like a religious experience for me.
Yes,
I
it
love
is.
watching it every single time. As I said at the top of the show, we don't bring y'all in just to get y'all pizza thoughts, which we do appreciate. We bring y'all in here to break down some of the big stories happening in and around Chicago. And Sarah, I'm going to start with you. When you hopped on, you had this kind of sigh of just like, oh, there's a lot going on right now. You've been covering a lot over the last few weeks, not only the major budget crisis that sits at the doorstep of Chicago public schools, the school board, the mayor, CTU, and all involved parties, but this was also the first week of school. So we was also seeing a bunch of young people get them backpacks ready, taking them first day of pictures, right? Administrators ringing the bells all around town. Can you kind of paint the landscape of what is Chicago public schools headed into this school year? What are the biggest challenges facing the district? Where are we at?
I love the first day of school. I mean, it's so fun to see all the kids, dressed in their best. And, they're, even if they have to wear uniforms, their uniforms still look bright and shiny. And, they haven't been washed a million times. And everyone's all, hopeful and excited. And then the school year sets in and you start to hear about all these issues. One thing that was different this year is that the mayor was with the interim CEO, whose name is Macklin King, and they are friends. Last year we had Pedro Martinez, who at the time of the first day of school, the mayor was behind the scenes firing him. So the first day was a little tense. So this year was different. Everybody was hugging the kids. Everybody looked happy to be there. But there still are a lot of challenges, in front of us. Bus issues are coming up. There's a lot of capital needs that the schools have. A lot of people worried with all this rain that, the roof that's in disrepair is going to just, send rain into the school. So there's definitely things on the horizon that we're looking at and worried about.
Yeah, I saw a ton of videos on my timeline, not of just people sending their kids to school. I also seen the videos of the teachers who they're like, "You excited for first day of school?" And they're like, "Yes, today's gonna be great." And then they come back to the end of the day, they was like, "How was the first day of school?" And I'm like, "Get this camera on my face.
Right.
Get this camera on my face. I'm ready to go home."
And this was a really short summer because last year the school year was delayed because of the DNC. They wanted to start after the DNC, and so it started late, so it ended late, and then it started again early this year. So I think it was only 9 weeks, which is really short. So I mean, you did hear some teachers say I feel like I never left this building. So
Sarah, one thing you've obviously covered very closely is CPS enrollment. We've talked about for years and years it dropping, but a couple places where it's growing is amongst English learners and students with differing learning capabilities, different physical capabilities. How prepared is the district heading into the year to provide for those young people?
One of the biggest questions coming into this school year is we did see an influx of new immigrants come over the last couple years to Chicago public schools. There was the time that the Texas governor was busing people here, but also just more people coming. And, we do not know how people are reacting to Trump's campaign against immigration and whether people are leaving, either self-deporting or being deported, and how that's going to impact schools. So for the first time, the last couple of years, the enrollment had stabilized, but now, there's some idea that maybe it will start declining again. And also the school system has had a fair amount of trouble making sure that those kids have the right language supports that they need in schools. There's definitely schools that had never had an English learning language population that suddenly got them, and some of the rules for how they allocate staff and things like that were kind of based on some like old notions of English language learning needs. And I think those kids were left without that much support. I mean, we heard stories of, people having to use Google Translate to talk to the kids because there's like nobody in the building that was Spanish speaking, and the child had, just arrived and only spoke Spanish. And I think the school system is trying its best to sort of catch up to those things, but now we're wondering exactly like, will that population even be there to catch up with?
All right, so I want to name a couple qualities. I want you to think if they apply to you, and just maybe I might got your next career move. Ready? I bet. Do you have a passion for people? You're excited to help others and you got great customer service skills. Do you crave flexibility, right? You want to be in charge of your own schedule and chart your own course. Do you got that hustle in you, right? Are you ready to turn that drive into something meaningful? All right, if you answer yes, then hey, real estate might be your next big move. Realtors help people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives, buying or selling a home, and no 2 days are the same. It's a chance to grow a business, make an impact, and build the lifestyle you're working towards. Visit realtorsrealestateschool.com to set up a free career consultation. Remember that amazing little cafe you went to last summer? The one with the perfect breakfast sandwich and them delicious smoothies? Or what about that hiking spot or that biking trail your friend told you about, but for some reason you can't remember the name? Well, with Overlook Maps, special places never get lost again, my friends. Create personal lists of places you've been and want to go. Hey, share your favorite hidden gems with friends and family. Let them discover that nail salon, that barbecue spot, that row of thrift shops that you've been trying to gatekeep. Or you know what, hey, if you want, keep your secret spots completely private. But what about this? Maybe you planning a trip with friends. You can create a share list where everyone can add their ideas. Maybe you visiting a new city. You can check out lists from locals who already know the best spots that you should pull up on. And here's a key part. No ads cluttering your list. No one selling your data to advertisers. Just your personal collection of amazing places organized exactly how you want them. Overlook Maps. Collect, organize, and share the places that matter to you. Download free at overlookmaps.com. And you want a little bonus? Go to overlookmaps.com/Chicago to see some of our lists and great spots on a map and in your pocket. Your places, your way. Back in July, a federal judge dismissed a lawsuit by the Trump administration attempting to block the enforcement of Chicago and Illinois sanctuary policies, which restrict the ability of local officials to aid federal immigration authorities. But as we all know, that has not stopped U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi from threatening Chicago and Illinois over sanctuary city policies, which again, at a time in which young people are going back to school, a lot of people have concern that operations may pick up around school buildings. What's the latest, Pope?
Yeah, so we've heard these threats from the federal government, the Trump administration, for a while, but they're getting more and more pointed now. So Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, she's targeting Chicago and Illinois for their sanctuary city policies. Those policies, for a refresher, basically mean that the city itself of Chicago doesn't cooperate or use city resources or personnel to assist in federal immigration enforcement, and prohibits the denial of city services based on immigration status. Pam Bondi and her office say that is illegal, that is against American interests, and she's demanding that the state and the city dismantle those policies, or, she says, face prosecution. She gave leaders until August 19th. She wrote a letter, and obviously these leaders, like Brandon Johnson and Pritzker, have not ended sanctuary city policies. So the drama continues to unfold. She now threatens to cut federal funding from the state and to bring in the National Guard, quote, like the LA riots or in Washington, D.C. Now, the courts, of course, have repeatedly backed Chicago and the state and defended their right to not have to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement unless there is an actual warrant for a known criminal or for known criminal activity. And so this has been challenged in court numerous times. At this point, it's like when the Patriots went 17-0 during a season. That's kind of what Chicago's got going on right now with these court cases. It's really fascinating to watch because you're seeing what's happening in D.C. right now. The federal government's powers over D.C. are a little different than they would be with Chicago and how a National Guard situation would work there. But the city's bracing because, as we know, this threat has been pushed for a while. And we know that the Trump administration is all about pushing the limits of their reach as a federal government. So we're going to have to see what happens going forward. But we know our elected officials, they're talking tough. They're standing 10 toes down and saying they're going to be defending immigrant rights.
I mean, they're going to have to do a lot more than, stand on rhetoric. They're going to need to create more guardrails, more protections, because we saw there's tens of billions of dollars of investment going into recruiting new agents, building new facilities. We've already sort of seen and questioned how effective those are, as during some detainment operations, Chicago police were there saying they weren't working in capacity alongside the ICE agents, but in many ways in a capacity that prevented people from, protesting or intervening. And we've seen those federal agencies much more willing to cooperate and carry out operations. And so as these threats continue, as the funding increases for, facilities and agents and more resources, it's going to be critical for lawmakers and officials to not only stand 10 toes down, but to work alongside these neighborhood and community efforts, these Migra Watch, these ICE Watch collectives. We actually sat down with Diego Morales, who is an organizer in Pilsen with the Rapid Response Network. And I'm going to be dropping that episode soon, really talking about what it looks like on the ground, trying to constantly adapt to these growing threats and these policy changes from the federal government.
And I'll add, I think it's very important that we say this is not normal. This is completely abnormal. And I think it's super important that we in the media emphasize that, because I think there is this this retreat happening, or sort of a capitulation happening on the national media scene. I don't think locally, but on the national media scene, when it comes to just kind of accepting what's happening, both sidesing what is happening and treating it as like standard politics. When in reality, a sitting president choosing to, or even threatening to deploy the National Guard without the permission of the governor and state officials, that itself is already just a major breach when we talk about states' rights and autonomy and things like that. But actually doing it, as we're seeing happening in D.C., as we saw happen in L.A., the threats, they're credible.
It's yet another bullet point in the authoritarian playbook. He has threatened arrests of the governor and the mayor. The lawsuits keep rolling in. The kidnappings, the unconstitutional detainment and arrest of people. It is also very difficult to sort of keep up, as we know, that sort of daily fight, that hopefulness that this isn't becoming status quo, because it very much feels like it is.
Yeah, we were talking the other day about how many lawsuits Kwame Raoul has against the federal government right now. It's like 30 or something. And, it's almost becoming like, oh, another lawsuit. But if you just think about that the state is having to defend against all these policies. And I do think at some point there's going to be questions about, beyond the rhetoric, what should the mayor and also the governor and state lawmakers should be doing to protect the residents of Illinois? I mean, threats of federal funding, not with healthcare, with all these different levels of government. Are we just going to say we're upset about it, or are we going to, as a state, figure out a way to make sure those services are still intact? I think that's a big question. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what they'd say we have no money, but at some point are you just going to let people, get thrown off of food benefits, get thrown off of healthcare, just there are those questions.
Speaking of the ongoing budget crisis that are only made worse by the threats of federal funding cuts, right now, the Chicago Public Schools and the school board, the mayor's office have to come together to get a budget passed by the end of the month, Sarah. The CTUs and the mayor's office have, repeatedly asked on the state and the governor to pony up more money. The governor had some pretty pointed words this week, and it kind of leaves us, further in limbo of like, how are we going to solve this problem?
Right. I mean, the governor basically said there is no money in Springfield for Chicago Public Schools. And then the CTU held a press conference saying, there should be money for Chicago Public Schools. The state is underfunding, not just Chicago Public Schools, but school districts across the state. That's according to the state's own calculations. A lot of school districts are moving further away from what the state deems is adequate. And, they're saying, in the face of all this other stuff that the schools are dealing with, we need to have more state funding. Now, in Chicago, it's coming down to this discussion about whether the school district should include in its budget the possibility of taking a loan to cover some costs, especially having to do with this controversial municipal pension payment, which, has just been controversial for like the last year. I'm sort of getting to the point where if I have to write the words municipal pension payment in another story, I'm going to, it's just become, it's just become such a focus. And then I do sort of feel like it's taken this focus off of, the bigger picture, which is that without federal COVID relief money, which ran out last year, Chicago Public Schools is historically and structurally underfunded. And that is why we have such a big problem. I mean, one of the problems that we have is we do have a huge debt load. But the reason why we have a huge debt load is because we've used borrowing in the past to make up for historical underfunding. And, people need to have that context. And then we also are paying teacher pensions. Chicago Public Schools pays into the teacher pension fund, which no other school district in the state has to pay into their teacher pension fund. It's completely picked up by the state. And so the Chicago Teachers Union is going to really try to push this. They want in the fall veto session, they want to get some more funding. I mean, even if it's just a modest amount at this point, they're really pushing the issue. Brandon Johnson is pushing the issue. All the 21 school board members really, really want to push the issue. But, what if they don't get extra money? I think the school, like what to do then is still up in the air. And we've got a week, basically a week from today, they will have a board meeting. And I actually have a question. I don't know what happens if the board doesn't pass the budget. For perspective, the budget actually expired. Last year's budget expired on June 30th. So they have 60 days from the time it expires to get a budget in place. And so the school year has started and there is not a budget in place, which is highly unusual. I mean, I've been around and covering Chicago Public Schools for about 2 decades now. And I went to Chicago Public Schools and I don't remember ever starting a school year without a budget.
I do wonder when, Pritzker looks at re-election, how much of an issue would this become? And so seeing that back and forth with a mayor who is standing very firm on this $1 billion number, and a CTU standing firm on that, and a governor who's saying, we just don't got it, bruh. Where the rubber meets the road, what is the solution here? I'm hearing from CTU folks that they're pushing for, hey, you can find it by raising taxes on the wealthy, right? And other solutions like that. But Pritzker's argument is like, that's kind of a magic wand approach right now that doesn't immediately give you $1 billion. So I'm not sure what the resolution is going to be here, because it seems like there's not much room for compromise if both are kind of digging their heels so staunchly on different ends of this debate.
I mean, one thing I just want to remind people is that back in the day, the Chicago Teachers Union did stage a one-day strike to protest the lack of state funding. That was one of the things that started some of the pressure that got the state to revamp its funding formula, which did produce more money for education overall in the state. And the school district also waged a major campaign with the mayor, which was Rahm Emanuel at the time. So there is some precedent for Chicago putting a lot of pressure on the state. Now, I don't know how wonderful it would look for Pritzker to have the teachers union stage a strike against him.
Before we jump into our good news, we're going to kind of lead with a little good news here. Chicago's own Chance the Rapper dropped his latest project, Starline, a little over a week ago at this point. Brandy, you did an amazing write-up and review on the album. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, man, I think it's an album that's being slept on. I mean, Chance the Rapper is a guy, flashback to 2016. What an era, right? What a time. What a time. Coloring book drops. He has his coloring book day at Comiskey Field, which was incredible. I got a chance to be there for that, my early Chicago days. And just the way he brought Chicago together, but also put Chicago on the map, really, not that Chicago needed to be put on the map, but really showcased his love and adoration for the city to the world. I think it was such a great era. And then he drops the big day and he gets fried to oblivion and everybody forgets about the guy. And in our conversation, we talked about how he does feel like people are scared to, admit that he's good or admit that this album is good. Or I'm not shy. I'll say it. This is a great album. You did your thing, Chance. Your pen game is sharp. Some of your best lyrics, some of your best introspection. It's vulnerable. It's real. And so I think people need to tap back in. I still have people being like, wow, is it really good? I haven't heard it yet. Yeah.
I'm going to always have love for Chance, not to harp on the old days, but Acid Rap dropped on my birthday.
Oh, wow.
My senior year of college. And so it was really the soundtrack to me wrapping up 4 years in Peoria. It was the soundtrack of me missing my city, having been away at school for that long. So it was a very good time for Chance to be dropping arguably one of the hottest mixtapes the city has ever produced. And it feels like amongst so many of his fans, so many just music fans at large, there's always been this desire to sort of recapture that energy and that momentum. And in a lot of ways, kind of prevents you from allowing an artist to grow and come into their own. And I really sat with Speed of Love, the final track of the album featuring Jasmine Sullivan, because he talks about that a lot, talks about how easy it is for people to say things like, oh, we missed the music when you weren't sober, when you were in the throes of drug addiction, and him kind of sitting with that. And it's really easy to just make that joke or to say that very flippantly. I appreciate him really leaning into that. The cultural cachet that Chance has managed as a largely independent artist with, essentially 3 albums and 2 mixtapes it really is like a dream come true. It is a 1 in a million story. It's a generational music story. And at a time in which so many of his contemporaries are still trying to find their way, some have either lost their life or their freedom, I do appreciate still what his story represents, because I remember him being out in them streets with them CDs, going to them open mics. I remember my brother talking about seeing him in those open mics. And so I appreciate the rollout of this one also. Kind of felt like it harkened back to those early kind of street mover days. And so, yeah, I love the story of the album.
It was great to chat with the guy. I'm the same age as Chance. So we talked about how I've kind of grown up with his music since 10 Day. And so, seeing his journey and also just being here in Chicago to kind of get to know him as a person too. And you see that journey through the music. He's one of us. And I think there's something about that, right? That's really endearing, really powerful. And you mentioned the marketing campaign, he's not a guy who's sitting up in some ivory tower. Like, he's in the streets. You can see him at Navy Pier getting McDonald's for his kids, right? You could see him at the Field Museum. You can see him at Jewel, and I think that is something that is really, really cool and really authentic to him, and something that I think is really part of what makes him a special artist too, is that sense of community and leaning into community too.
Every single episode of CityCast Chicago ends the exact same way, and that is with me begging you to bring your ass back here for the next episode. But before we close the doors today, some good news. Sarah, in such a busy week, I'm sure you got some good news for us.
Well, the good news is kids are back in school for some parents who are sort of happy to have their homes quiet. Also, this was a summer in which there wasn't as much violence as there has been in recent years. Crime is down. I mean, that's really good news. I think that a lot of kids, that there were a lot of kids working. The youth employment program by the mayor, captured 30,000 kids. And, I think those are all good things.
Largely a safer summer for young people. And while I know many of them probably aren't thinking going back to school is the best part of this week, I know for a lot of their parents, they're happy as hell about it. Brandon, over to you. You wanted to put us on to some more local music from one of your homies.
Yeah, let me tell you, man. So NBC5 Chicago anchor Evrod Cassimy, man, he's an incredible artist, a really talented singer, and he's dropping a new album August 22nd called Mr. Cassimy. But the cool thing is all the sales from this album, as he does with all of his projects, all the sales are going to go toward a scholarship fund with the Chicago Housing Authority. It's called Springboard to Success. The idea is to inspire youth and get them into college. And so he's encouraging people to listen to the album, not really for his own exposure, but to raise as much money as possible for these CHA scholarships. All proceeds, he says, are going to that. You can download the album. You can find him on Instagram, Evrod Cassimy. He's going to be on NBC Chicago plugging it for the next few days for sure, so you can catch him there. But August 22nd, it's just a really cool thing to see. He's a Chicago guy himself, and to give back, we're talking about community and leaning into that. Just good to see somebody putting people first. As president of NABJ Chicago, where we raise scholarships, and I'm all about the impact. I'm always impressed by people that put impact above everything. So shout out to Evrod, shout out to NBC. New album. The boy can sing too. I mean, I'm not just saying it because he's my friend. I clicked the link when you sent
it to me. The photo is official.
The photo, yeah. For those listening, you got to go look at the photo. He in the street. Got the double-breasted suit. Yeah, man, he fly.
I'll go wrap us up with a few events, both personal and then just around the city. We talked about a lot of festivals this week, but another one that's returning this weekend is Bulls Fest. It's going to be outside the United Center. It's a free festival. They got a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. They're going to have special appearances. Kendall Gill going to be out there. Eddie Curry going to be out there. And who don't got somebody who went to high school with Eddie Curry? Horace Grant, Benny the Bull. They're going to have 3-point contest, food, and so much more. So I'll drop a link for you. I also wanted to plug, shout out to Creative Morning Chicago. I'm really excited to be their keynote speaker next week, Friday at 8:30 in the morning at the Chicago Architecture Center. I'll just be talking a little bit about my journey in the city, talking about storytelling. And then one last thing I wanted to put y'all on. Please stay tapped in with our events calendar. Our Hey Chicago newsletter editor, Emmy Mack, works very hard on that. And if you're looking for something to do over the next couple of days, that is a perfect place to visit. Join me in thanking our guest today, freelance journalist Brandon Pope. Thank you for making time for us, my friend.
Always great to be here, bro.
And from WBEZ, Sarah, we appreciate you doing the work, so we ain't got to. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun.
Also, join me in thanking the people who make CityCast Chicago possible. Our executive producer is Simone Alicea. Our producer is Michelle Navarro. Roving producer this week, Lizzie Goldsmith. Our Hey Chicago newsletter editor is Emmy Mack. Our social media manager is Rick Homuth. The music we all love is from our boy Sam Thousand, All the Kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. Hey, do me one favor. Just share us with your people. And if you have shared us with all of your friends and family, then go discover some new cousins. I don't know what to tell you. All right, I'm going to talk to y'all on Monday. Peace.